Hello, hello, and welcome. Welcome once again to the Secrets of the High Demand Coach podcast. And I am here with yet another high demand coach. It is the one and only HR Huntsman, who's the founder of Leader's Edge. He's also a business and leadership keynote speaker, organizational strategist, author, business executive coach, and business leadership consultant. HR founded Leader's Edge to invest in leaders, especially young leaders. And his passion stems from his backstory, overcoming early childhood struggles and building successful and impactful organizations. He firmly believes that to succeed, one must begin with the mindset and then move to the principles and disciplines that create long-term success for a company and for an individual. HR is an accomplished speaker, giving roughly 4,000 talks to approximately 400,000 people worldwide, and he's here with us today. Well, HR, so excited to have you here. As I was researching the episode, I came across a statement that you made, and I want to kind of unpack it a little bit. Why is it that we as leaders should be falling or maybe even failing from time to time?
Scott, first of all, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me on the show. So I think it's fundamental that if you are not occasionally tripping and falling, you're not playing big enough. It's easy to rest on our past successes, laurels, or a comfort zone. And if we're not pushing the edges, if we're not pushing those boundaries of what's possible, if we're not curious about what we're capable of, we will never discover our true potential. So you have to risk falling. You have to risk the occasional scraped knee or bruised elbow or bloody nose as a leader, as a human, in my opinion, to even begin to scrape the idea of what you're capable of.
Yeah, I love that. There's this temptation, and I know I have it. I think a lot of us do, but we'll just run with I know I have it, to want to graduate from that reality, right? We want to reach a level of success where maybe, we don't fall quite as much. What's the problem with that type of mindset?
Well, everything that you're seeking is outside of your zone of familiarity. Everything you want is outside that comfort zone. And so to get to that new level requires us to push through. Now, I just celebrated my 59th birthday, and I can tell you, Scott, I am hungrier and more curious than I've ever been before. Now, what you say about, not wanting to trip and fall as much, hopefully we don't trip and fall over the same things. That would just be stupid, right? That's just, you're just dumb at that point. Right. But at every level, there's something more for you. Yeah. And every one of those new levels requires discomfort and some pain and a learning curve and some bruises and sore muscles. Otherwise, we just get stagnant and we begin to just fade and get dull. And for me and the kind of people I like to hang around, that's not really an option for us.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's interesting, a lot of folks in leadership, a lot of the founders that I work with will reach some kind of arbitrary point where they wonder, do I really have what it takes to get to the next level? Can I really be a X million dollar company or this type of leader or whatever it may be? And all too often we go to this kind of fatalistic, I'm either wired for that or not, right? I'm kind of like destined for mediocrity is what you'd really read into it. And what I've found is, while there are different skill sets for different people, 100%, there's different levels of intellect and everything like that. It's almost never a determining factor in the equation. Instead, what I've seen is the biggest thing is kind of the interplay between a compelling vision for the future, right? Do they have a vision for their life that demands that they build those skills versus the comfort of the success that they've achieved so far? Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree. And let's just be real to you and I and everyone listening. We all have doubts if we're ready for the next level. Every one of us has those doubts, that imposter syndrome. We climb to whatever pinnacle or whatever peak and we see the next one. And can I play at that level? I wonder that. I don't know, but I want to find out.
Right.
And I always harken back to a great conversation I had. I was at this conference and she was the first female combat Marine pilot. And she had flown in Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and she talked about some of her combat experience, and she was becoming a coach. And the moderator asked her some questions about combat experience, yada, yada, yada. She gets off the stage and walks up, and I see her, and I go shake her hand. I'm an Air Force veteran, so thank you for serving. Then I ask one of my dumbest questions ever. When you flew into combat, like, were you afraid? She says, H, of course I was afraid. In fact, sometimes I got so afraid I wet my pants. And we just laughed, and I said, well, what'd you do then? And she said, I flew into combat with wet pants. I've never stopped thinking about that. So whatever that next level is, yeah, it can scare you, but you just freaking fly into combat with wet pants.
Wow. What a great, what a terrible and wonderful picture all at the same time.
A great story?
It's so true. So speaking of stories, many folks will have heard the kind of proverbial tale about the elephant that was roped to a stake and then as a baby and then couldn't break out. And one of the things that speaks to in the leadership world is our own propensity to take constraints of the past, whether real or perceived, and then apply them to our present. And why is it that these kind of limiting beliefs or assumed constraints or whatever you want to call them, in your experience, why are they so powerful?
Sure, it's what we know. So I grew up in a alcoholic, abusive home. I grew up pretty poor. I was called white trash, trailer trash. Kids like you don't go to college. You should be a ditch digger, join the military. So that's what I knew. That's what I'd been told. That's what I grew up around. That's the culture I grew up in. So now I didn't necessarily completely buy into it. So I left home, joined the military, and I wanted bigger things. I began to meet people who thought bigger thoughts. And that captain, he retired Colonel John Simmons, he taught me to think bigger. He said, H, you can change the world. Take that pain, make something good out of it. So one of the principles I found is, if you hang out with 5 alcoholics, you'll be the 6th. If you hang out with 5 millionaires, you'll be the 6th. So one of the biggest things to do is put yourself around big thinkers, big people, surround yourself with resources that will challenge your thinking, that will challenge those mindsets, those limiting beliefs, so you can see, oh, there is something more than what I was brought up under. And the more I hang around big thinkers and high achievers and big doers, like, oh, okay. If they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah, and it goes back to your idea of those always exist outside of our comfort zone. I remember one of the times that hit me, international travel has always done that for me. The first time I go to a different place, it just makes my world so much bigger. But from the business world, I remember the very first time I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Guy Kiyosaki, I can't remember his last name. But and it talked about, it was a little line, it was a passing thing. It wasn't even a point he was making, but he was just talking about the bank account balance for one of the bank accounts, and it was just like the biggest number I'd ever heard of in my life, as a young maybe 20 something, and it did just that. It kind of broke that open to say, hey, like, why not? Now, one of the constraints that I feel like we run into a lot is, particularly for young kind of entrepreneurial organizations, it's just there's a wonderful and terrible messiness to all of it. But that messiness kind of translates to more and more time spent just kind of bouncing from fire to fire, right? And just some people call it the tyranny of the urgent. And you kind of end the day just exhausted and depleted, and wonder, is this it? Like, is this what leading is supposed to feel like? Or is it the burden of a leader? What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I've started my own companies. What I do every day is help people start and build companies. And that tyranny of the urgent is real, and it's a trap for sure. To work yourself out of that trap requires 2 things, and it requires scalable people and scalable processes. Otherwise, you are trapped in that tyranny of the urgent. So working really hard in those early years when you're building a company, yeah, it's a grind. It's an absolute, there is no joke. It's a grind. If you get into entrepreneurship thinking you're going to have Hawaiian vacations in the first couple of years, I mean, you're fooling yourself. It's a grind. But if you will focus on scalable people, getting the right people in the right seats on the bus, scalable processes, you can then work your way into that scalability where you're not putting out fires, you are fire preventing rather than fire extinguishing.
Yeah. I love that. And it takes both. I've found, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I've found that most leaders kind of would know that that's the right answer, but they have a tendency to bias pretty heavily toward one side or the other, right? You have some folks who are more comfortable with people and it's just like, it's all people and we all sing kumbaya, or you have other folks who are a little bit more, it's all having the right answer or the right structure and, get in line kind of a thing. Why is it so rare to find someone who can master pulling both of those, scalable people and scalable processes, together?
Well, the deeper issue goes to the psychology of that leader, and usually they struggle with control. Usually there's a control issue. It's their baby. We who are entrepreneurs, it's our baby. I've built this thing from scratch. I know everything about every facet of it. And so relinquishing control either through systems or the empowerment of people can be scary, because maybe they only do it 90%, 80% to what I could do it. So first we have to address the control issue. And I joke with all the CEOs I work with, breaking their white knuckle grip off that thing, and then getting out of the weeds of the business enough to develop those people, to build those processes, because both of them take time that CEO or that entrepreneur think they do not have. I don't have the time to sit down and document those systems and train those people and relinquish that control. So taking the time, making the time to do those things is critically important after you fight the control battle.
Right. HR, I want to shift gears a little bit because, again, as I was researching the episode, there were a couple things that really jumped out to me that are kind of central to why this podcast exists. So one of the challenges, just for our newer listeners and for you, one of the challenges that I faced as a leader was we went out and hired some really bad coaches and consultants. Not bad people, just bad coaches and consultants. And that was equal parts their problem and our problem, right? We didn't hire very well and they didn't help very well. So there's lots of lessons to learn there. But I thought that was kind of an isolated incident. I thought that we were really the only ones who struggled with that. And once I got into the industry, ironically, I started speaking around the country and noticed that lots of people have had really bad experiences with coaches and consultants. In fact, a vast majority of the ones that I've bumped into, which was kind of scary for me. And so the heart behind the show is to bring folks like yourself who understand what great coaching is, so that one, we can share your wisdom, but two, help folks to see what great coaching looks like. So my question for you, kind of in the context of all of that, is what should great coaching focus on?
Gosh, that's a great question. So, okay, I'll paint a picture using a client of ours in Nevada. So they come to me and they reach out to me to hear about some of our work, and they begin to ask if I can come work with them. And they paint a picture of they've had like half a dozen coaches over the last 2 or 3 years, and coaches and consultants. I said, okay, hold on. Why have all those failed? Like, what's the deal with your culture, your team, whatever? And the last thing I want to be is the next guy on your coaching carousel who didn't do a good job. And they said, they all just come in and talk and fluff and blah, 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 and ideas, and don't do anything. They don't have any process or system to actually accomplish things. They just give us a bunch of ideas, and then we're supposed to figure it out. And H, what we see that you do differently is you have this methodology where you actually bring transformation, follow up with accountability, have deliverables. So all I can say from my experience is what bad coaches and consultants do apparently is talk and fluff and ideas, and don't bring around real organizational transformation.
Yeah.
What great coaches then, on the flip side, do is they bring about real transformation in their clients, the teams that they work with, through either a proven methodology or proven system, or just the way they interact, that person sees tangible results. Because these people are paying good money. They're paying good money for us to come in. And every one of those dollars needs to be honored and respected, because it was hard won.
Yeah.
I'm a business owner, you're a business owner. Those dollars are hard fought for. Blood, sweat, and tears goes into that. That needs to be honored. So making sure that every one of those dollars comes back with a bunch of friends is the goal of good coaching and good consulting.
Yeah, that's so true. It's fascinating that you make that point, because I did a lot of research when I stumbled on this problem, interviewed a ton of coaches, and the number one thing that separates kind of what I would classify as the kind of average coaches from great coaches, high demand coaches, is that a structured process,
Okay.
100%. It's 100% of those who are doing a great job have one, and
Yeah.
almost 100% of those who don't. Right, is the biggest single differentiator,
Okay.
and because it's not easy, right? It's not easy to have a process that can lead more than one company through. Right, it takes depth, it takes knowledge and skill. Why do you think? With the process that you bring, why was it so important for you to develop something like that?
I'm a process guy, so I think in terms of systems, it's the way my brain works. I like being able to see a methodology, where we're going, what we're doing, something I can hang with. It's how I built my own companies. And so over the 30 years of building my company, I created this, what we now call the Leaders Ed Performance Engine. It's looking at 6 systems of business. And so any business that invites us in, we walk them through the 6 different systems of business that we've identified, and we work with their team on every one of those systems. And each system takes 2 to 3 months to go through. We start with the foundation and then team building and strategy, blah, blah, blah. And so walking people through so they can see exactly what we're doing, what it's going to do for them, the outcomes for them, what they're responsible for, how it's going to help them scale. They get a full fleshed out binder. I mean, they get the whole deal now. They have this scalable company they didn't have before, so they can see these tangible results. That's just the way I'm wired, and maybe not everyone's wired that way. Maybe some business owners like theory or just philosophy or ideas. I like concrete steps and methodology, and our clients do as well. So it was important for me and how we built my companies, and so I've just offered that to the companies that ask us to come help them.
I love that. I love that. HR, there's this question that I ask all my guests. I'm going to fire it your way here in a second. And the question is, what would you say is the biggest secret you wish wasn't a secret at all? What's that one thing you wish everybody watching or listening today knew?
Oh, Scott, this is easy. It's leveraging the power of what we call creative conflict. Our secret sauce by far is all these systems and things we talk about, they come to fruition in this context of creative conflict. Most companies don't do this well. Most companies avoid conflict, and they're leaving dollars on the table. I believe the greatest waste in human history is the waste of human potential. And we're not mining for creativity and innovation because we're not bringing the bright people in the room and saying, okay, gang, we have a problem. What are your ideas? And I disagree, and I think we should do it this way. And I don't know that will work. And what do you think? Let's try this. And they don't bring that heat and friction to bear because most leaders don't know how to handle it. They're too insecure. They've been taught conflict is bad. And so there's all these brilliant ideas in their company that they're not going after because they don't leverage the power of creative conflict. They don't create the space for it. They don't create the safety for it. And so they're not innovating. They're not creating. They're not building dynamic ideas for the future.
Yeah. That bit there at the end is so powerful because folks won't just jump into creative conflict. Most of them won't, right? And a lot of that has nothing to do with you, right? A lot of that can just be from their experiences of the past. Most people you hire or that work for you will have worked somewhere else and will have not been given that freedom. And so taking that big step back of not just saying, hey, go be creative or go step into conflict, creating the environment for that to thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, talking about taking a risk and going outside that zone of familiarity, building that creative conflict takes time. It takes energy. You're going to fall a lot. There's going to be dead silence and crickets a lot because exactly what you talk about, people bring their baggage and fear into the room from past scar tissue, and creating that takes a lot of time and risk and modeling for the leader to say, I don't exactly know what to do here. I dropped the ball here. I failed here. I messed up here. Gang, I need your help. That level of vulnerability and trust and safety, the leaders have to model it, invite people into it. It takes a lot of time. It can be scary. But the companies that do that, they see an ROI that's crazy because there are so many good ideas out there. We're not going after them.
So true. So true. Well, HR, this has been incredible. It was a ton of fun. I know there's some folks listening, and it just every word's resonating with them. And they've had coaches that have talked at them. They've done the whole thing, but they know that there's got to be more, and they want someone to lead the way. How can they find more out about you and the work that you do?
Sure. I'd love for them to reach out to me. Just go to our website, yourleadersedge.com, or I love a personal connection, HR@yourleadersedge.com. Just send me an email. I'd love to connect.
Fantastic. HR, thanks for being on the show. Just a privilege and honor having you here today. And for those of you watching and listening, your time and attention mean the world to us. I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I know I did, and I cannot wait to see you next time. Take care.